Well, my studio process has, I've been doing this for over a decade. So every time I go into the studio from when I was 14, 15 years old to now, has been little gems that have sprinkled on. I can't really pinpoint like this was my process. This is how I learned, because every time you go collab with somebody, you go into a different studio session, you do a song, you're learning something. But as far as the birth of lyric is me getting in the studio for the first time was under the tutelage of my big brother, Radar Ellis. Shout out to Radar Ellis, who's a professor at Berklee College of Music. He took me under his wing way early. I was about 15 years old, taking classes at Berklee while in high school. And I ran up on him. We had what was called the Media Center at Berklee. It's gone now. It's a whole new building there now. But people would congregate there and mingle, kind of like a cafeteria in high school, but just with no food. It was just computers and chairs and stuff. And I saw him walking by, and I remember seeing Radar perform with this orchestra of like a horn section and hella guitars and dancers and rapping. And I'm young, so I hadn't seen the Roots yet or any of that. This is my first time seeing live musicianship with an incredible MC commanding the crowd, rapping that way. So I ran up on Radar like, hey, I loved it, and I rap too, And he was just like, oh, word, we'll spit something right now. So I did. I just rapped the hardest verse that I had wrote, my little 14, 15-year-old self. And he was actually impressed, and the rest is history. He kind of took me under his wing and taught me how to write rhymes and taught me about wordplay and the art of 16 bars and concepts. And my first time recording was in his dorm closet. He had a whole bunch of sweaters and everything and just put the mic right there. And that was my first studio. And for years, that was my comfort. Just muting the sound of the room in a closet. And I don't think I got into a real recording studio until I moved to Atlanta, maybe years later. But my whole youth was just recording in my rooms and closets. So the going to the studio thing was a luxury to me. That wasn't something that I started off doing. Whereas a lot of artists today have home studios and can go to the studio on their own. That's kind of like a no-brainer. But in early 2000s, that wasn't really my experience. It was the closet, turning on Logic and Pro Tools and recording in the closet with all my big bros sweaters and hoodies and stuff. So I learned, my process was kind of learning to make do with the bare minimum and make do with little to nothing. As far as just the glitz and glamour. But the more my art expanded and the more my palette expanded and what I wanted to hear, the more I craved and yearned for a bigger space and more toys, as we would say, to play with. But, now I want to get in the studio with a full band. I've never experienced that yet. Just to being in a studio and record with all musicians. There's still so many things that I haven't touched in the studio process. But now, I can record myself. And shouts out to Illustrate in Atlanta. I've gotten gems from him, of course, Radar, and just my collaborations throughout the years. And the times that I've been able to record with other people, I've picked up little things along the way. Oh, yeah. Well, on Love's Trail Mix, I produced the first record, Tall. I did that 100% by myself. And Magnetic, I co-produced that one with Nameless. I mean, not Nameless, I'm sorry. Magnetic, I co-produced that record with Illustrate. Shouts out to Illustrate. There was an era of my Atlanta season where I was just making a whole lot of beats with Illa. And it was so fun because he would just chop the samples and he would just like go for it, and I loved the sequencing. I just hated the chopping. I hated the fine tuning of it. I was like, just put the drums on the pad and let me do it. So, but he loved it because it was like, you're a drummer. So that natural pocket, that natural, timing, I did the drums and then I sequenced the sample. He already chopped the sample, and then added the echoes and delays and, just the fine tuning of the sample again, a dope collaboration. And that's what got me into producing more at that time. Just working with somebody that is a good teacher. Illustrate is just a really good teacher, really helpful, and fun. Lets me kind of be myself and joke and yell and, get excited. And that's important as an artist, to be able to kind of just go crazy and not let that other person that's in the room kind of let you be your natural self. And so I love that about working with Illustrate. Magnetic was just a track that we just had on the tuck, and I was like, hey, let me actually lace a verse to this, and just ended up on the record. So those are the two I could take credit for.